Hi, my name is Ville Mansikkoniemi and I work as an event coordinator at Aalto Ventures program. For those who don't know, AVP offers entrepreneurship education at Aalto University for all Aalto students. We do this by offering courses, study trips, of course not in this situation, but normal times, as well as open events like these. For more information, please see avp.aalto.fi. So let's hop into today's topic. There are no guaranteed jobs anymore. This is because the transformation of work life and the speed of change is affecting each of our careers. The responsibility is now yours. What does the future work even look like? What sort of skills do you need in order to succeed? I don't know. And luckily, these are hard and complicated questions to answer. But luckily, we have somebody today to answer these questions. Perttu Pölönen has many titles: innovator, keynote speaker, visionaire, futurist. He is also a classical composer by education, but he became entrepreneur at a young age. He was also honored by MIT Tech Review as one of the 35 visionaries under 35 in Europe, as well as he has also published 2 books. So without further ado, please welcome Perttu Pölönen.
Thank you very much, and hi to you all. It's great to be here. My name is Perttu, and I'm going to talk about the future skills, future of work. You know, what kind of world are we going into, and how can we succeed in that world? We have a good 60, 90, maybe 120 minutes, so take a good seat, you know, lean back. It would be obviously much better to be there, you know, physically in the same room. But now that we're doing it remotely, you know, enjoy yourselves and let's start. So, all in all, my approach to the future is that there's a lot of talk and discussion about what will change in the future, which is, you know, understandable. We want to know what is different soon. But I think that in these times when so many things are uncertain, it's not really the best thing to know what will change, because quite many things will actually change. But rather, what are the things that don't change? You know, what are the things that we can rely on? Something that we can trust that, okay, this is so essential for us that, you know, we are not gonna get rid of this. And if we can find some of those things, we really have something very valuable, because we can invest in that. We can, you know, build on that. And in today's world, I would say that we should focus on what are the things that don't change at all. You know, if I asked you, what are the things that are different in 10 years? Let's say 3 different things in your chosen field. I think everybody can name at least a couple of things. But if I asked you, what are the things that don't change at all in the next 20 years from this day on, that would be much more difficult to answer. So when we talk about skills, when we talk about work life, I would say the best investment is to really find the things that don't change at all and be very good at those. So I try to take this approach and really kind of find the core skills, core things in life in general that I believe will also be important in the future. But let me start with going a bit back into the history so we can understand what kind of path we have come through already, and thus where are we heading. There has been different kinds of revolutions when it comes to work before, so this is nothing new, right? There are different kind of guesses on whether there has been 3 or 5, or, you know, I say it this way: we've had 3 and the 4th one is coming. If we go back thousands of years, what was the first one that changed the way we lived? You know, what changed the era we lived in? Well, it was the agricultural revolution, right? It's pretty obvious that when we came up with the ways to make food and actually grow food, it changed the way of living for pretty much all of us. So if you were born in that era, what would have you become when you grew up into adulthood? What was the archetype worker, in a way, that time? Well, we were all farmers, you know, in one way or another. Obviously, we had different tasks like we have today, but in one way or another, we were all related to growing and making food and kind of making living a bit easier for all of us in that way. Okay, so what happened next? Well, first of all, what usually makes this kind of change happen when we go from one era to another is the technological advancements. So I see technology as a kind of way to make things possible that we as humans are not able to do, because we're so limited. So let me give you an example. We are very limited in our resources, so we need tools to help us. We cannot see, for example, to other galaxies with our own eyes, because our eyes simply cannot do that, right? So that's why we build a telescope, right? And the same way, we don't see on a microscopic level with our eyes. Again, it's too limited, so we make a microscope for that. So in different ways, technology evolves when we see that, well, we are not good enough doing certain things. We cannot swim to Tallinn because it's too far away. Our muscles aren't enough. Well, let's not worry about that. Let's build a boat, right? We cannot remember a scene, so we build a camera. And we cannot, send the photo through telepathy or whatever, but we need internet for that. So in a way, technology always emerges when we see that, well, you as a human are not able to do something, but actually we could make tools and machines that can. So when we saw that, well, farmers actually, there are some problems, some challenges that we all have when we have to do that work. Well, why don't we come up with different kinds of tools to, make it easier? And that's what we did, obviously. So when the technology got better, it kicked out the farmers because we didn't need them anymore. We had all the machines, we had, tractors, we had technology to actually, make it better for us. So we had to find something new to work on. We all were not farmers anymore. We needed something new. So that technological advancement, it put us through to industrial revolution. So that became the new era that we lived in. Well, the same question again to you. If you were now born, what would have you become when you were an adult? So what became the new normal, new archetype worker in that time? Well, we were all more or less factory workers. Of course, we were not all, physically in the factory lines, but rather the ideology that kind of was emerged. So we basically did one certain, task every day as well as possible, and in one way or another, it helped the whole big picture. So we were kind of factory workers. We went to the cities, we come up with the education system, and so we've kind of face things as if they were factories. Okay, so now that the technology advanced, again, it did all those mundane jobs, mundane tasks much better than we humans. The routine tasks were much easier to give to the robots and machines. So we didn't need you anymore in the factory lines, assembling things, because you were not that quick, you were not that cheap, you made mistakes, and so forth. So again, because of the technology, we were kicked out from our workplace. And again, we had to find something new to work on. Well, what was the third revolution? What is the revolution we're living in right now? So what is something that we've never seen before, but actually right now, this is very clear for all of us? Well, now we're living in information revolution, right? Because the access we have to information, the amount of information we have, we've never had anything like this. It's unprecedented, right? So now that you have been born to this world, this time, who are you? What is the one kind of archetype worker to kind of explain pretty much all the jobs, all the work we're doing right now, 2020? What is the name for that? Even though we have different titles, what is the one kind of feature that is similar to all of us? Well, right now we are information professionals, because what we do for a living actually is we just manage information. We just handle information in one way or another the way they want us to do it. So it's Excels, it's PowerPoints, it's emails, it's sending, it's receiving, it's writing, speaking, editing. It's all about handling information. And to this era, it's important to understand that the ability to manage the information and to think is also your skill levels at the work life. So as well as you can manage and use the resources and the information out there, as competent you then are as well. So it's all about what information do you have to give. You're only as important as the information you have to deliver, right? We all are being measured by the information we hold. So what happens next? Well, the exact same thing that has happened all before. So technology will actually come and kick us out from our usual workplace, so the offices, right? Because there are some technologies that are actually much better at handling information. So obviously I'm talking about AI, right? Machine learning. I'm talking about computers in general. They are faster to read. They're faster at calculating. They are more analytical than you. They are more effective than you. In many ways, they are much better at handling the information. So, yes, they are going to actually, make us jobless for most of us. So we are going to the next revolution now. This is the change we're talking about. What is the future of work? Now, what would you say? What's the next era that we are heading to? What kind of world is the next generation going to see? I would say we too, but what is future? Now, my take is that the future, the next revolution is going to be human revolution. Because now we really have to go a bit deeper to understand what are the things that only humans can do. The better the technology becomes, the better we have to understand what we actually have to offer. The more technological the society will become, the more humane and empathetic and compassionate we also have to become. So the human skills like personality, character, these soft skills will actually be the added value we bring to the work life. Because only we humans can actually do that. So we have to be good at that, right? Those are the skills of the future. Now, what would be the archetype worker in the future? So one kind of word to describe the nature of the work we will do. I would say creative problem solver. This is something we all, I think, are going to be. We will have problems, we will have challenges, that's for sure, but the challenges we're facing in 2040, 2050 are going to be a bit different than what we are having today. So with new problems, you also need new kind of thinking, so creativity, right? So this is something I think that would describe the future of work. But now that you are looking at the kind of evolution of work, I have like one very simple kind of catchphrase to remember what sums it up. So basically, the evolution of work has gone from muscles to head, and from head to heart. So the resource used to be in the muscles, right? Because in the farmhouses, in the fields, it was physical work. So you needed to have strength because you were not able to carry on those tasks without actually your body. So you needed strength. So muscles was the resource. If you didn't have those, you were not big of a help, right? But the machines actually outperformed our muscles. So the tractors, horses, why would we even try to compete against them? They are better. So we moved to the head. So let's go and educate you. Now we come up with degrees, we come up with education. You have to kind of remember things, and that's the kind of value you're offering to work life. So that's, again, what you have to give today. But in the future, do you think you can compete with your brain against Google? Which one wins, Google or you? Who remembers more things, internet or you? Our brain is not enough to actually try to compete. Why would we even compete against these things? Yes, we have to now move on from head to heart. So heart is something only we humans have, and obviously those skills that come with history that we have, culture we have, and so on. That's something that's very valuable. Obviously, we're always opposed to change. We've always fought against it. We've never wanted to really change. We've never really wanted to kind of just give up our jobs. But nevertheless, the computers, the machines have always won the battle. So no matter how much we fought against, well, I think this is going to happen sooner or later. We went from the farmhouses to factory houses, from factories to offices, and from offices, we will move on one day, maybe to some kind of hybrid model that we already have right now. Who knows? But I'm very optimistic, as you can see. We have always become a bit better when technology has challenged us. Every time the technology has kind of pushed us further, we have become a bit better as humans, I think. We have had to become better educated and so on. But now, what we need to understand is obviously how are we different from the computers then? So what are the skills that actually differ us from the machines, the option that we now have? So let's talk about that for a minute. Now, how would you explain it to a kid? Let's say a 10-year-old. You have to really explain it as simply as possible. How do you differ from a computer? How do you solve problems? How do a computer solve problems? How do you approach these kinds of things? Now, the way I see it, I would say that the main difference is that we can talk and discuss things with very, words and concepts that are not well defined. Let's put it this way. So we can talk about things that are good or bad. Something, there's a lot of something or a little, or let's say there's right and wrong. This is very, difficult to define. Whereas computers, they like things that are well defined, right? They use logic and numbers. You need to have data in order for the machine or a computer to function, right? So when you talk about something being good, what is that number, right? When you talk about something being right, how do you put that into logic? It depends on the context, obviously. So this is kind of this is different when we approach a problem. Let's say I have 10 apples over here. Now you understand what I'm talking about. A computer does too, because 10 is the value that everybody understands. But if I told you that there's a lot of apples here, you would understand what I'm talking about. You have an image in your head. You can actually estimate how many apples are there in total. But a computer, what is a lot? Is it like 70%? What's the size? Like, is it like square root 16? Is it like, they don't have a concept for that. Obviously, they're going to get better. So maybe one day they are able to gather the information what they need. But as humans, it comes immediately to us. We can imagine what it actually even looks like. We can put meaning to it and so on. We can discuss whether it's beautiful or not and all these different things. Or let's say another example. Let's say there's an ant running on the floor and the ant jumps on my head. Now, all of you understand that an ant can never jump that high. It's impossible for a little ant. Because you've probably seen an ant, yes, and you've played when you were a kid. You have the experience. What is an ant and how do they actually move and so on. But a computer, if I told the same thing to a computer, they don't have intuition to say it's not possible, right? Because they don't work that way. They have to calculate everything. So the computer, first of all, they have to know, what's the size of the ant. So how many centimeters? What's the length of the arm? What's the muscle energy and the jumping technique and the distance and my height and all the things after which they can calculate, and maybe yes, they get an answer that an ant can jump, let's say 0.1329567 centimeters, but not like 1 meter 84. So the result is negative. An ant cannot jump that high. So yes, humans and computers, we both got the right answer, but we used very different kind of thinking to get there. You follow me? So the process was very different. And this is my point exactly. All the jobs, the tasks in the future, where you need to understand the context. Let's say you take into consideration our culture. What does it mean to say or do this thing in our culture? Maybe you take into consideration our history. So what does this mean, looking back? Or what? Maybe you take into consideration social norms, right? So you know what to do, how to behave in certain situations. This is all this kind of silent knowledge that you have gathered along your life, which actually helps you, interpret a bit better what this situation really means and put meaning to it. And in this way, this, I would say, is kind of the value we really have as humans that we can give in the future of work. Now, here are some of skills that computers are good at and humans are good at. And you see, we're not actually even competing or trying to, we're not competing over the same things. Computers are very good at locating knowledge, let's say. They can go through a big data mass and find correlations and all this, which is wonderful. They have wonderful, endless capacity. right? They are very good at focusing and concentrating. They are much better in that than humans. But we, on the other hand, we have morals. We can talk about, context. We can talk about dilemmas and abstract things. We can put meaning to things. We have imagination. We have common sense. We are better at teaching as well. We can take many things into consideration. So it's not like computers or machines in general are there to kind of take something from us, but rather they're giving us a gift. We can actually focus on the things that we are better in the start, right? So in this way, yes, we have valued very much people who are very analytical and very effective, and they have good reasoning skills, and our whole education system tries to make us so. But maybe that's not what you will need, or yes, you will need those, but maybe that's not enough for you to succeed in the future. Computers will always be better at those. So that alone is not enough. And maybe it's good to think this way too. We do many of these things naturally. And I would say the things that come naturally to us, it's a sign of something. So maybe that's something we can also remember, that's something we should focus on. Now, here is a few more, the skills that we need, and the features we should focus on. Well, first of all, it's good to note that the same things that make us different from computers, those things make us happier in life. So it's quite a good deal. If you actually focus on these, I think you'll be fine. But there are few challenges when it comes to these skills, how to teach them, how to measure them, and so on. The biggest one being, I would say, how to measure these. Because obviously, if we go and try to teach a persistence lesson at school, or let's say empathy or leadership or reliability or an endurance class, it's first of all very difficult because we don't have right and wrong answers that we usually want to have at schools, right? We have right and wrong when it comes to mathematics. We have right and wrong when it comes to grammatics. But we don't have right and wrong when it comes to curiosity or persistence. So it's very difficult to value, what number do you get? Or even, how do we even make anything universal out of these? How can we make a test for enthusiasm? Can we make a test for compassion? Or what would that test look like? I don't know. So now we have a problem. We humans are, we only develop what we can see, something concrete. If we measure it, we focus on it. If we don't have a way to measure it, it's kind of invisible. It doesn't exist. It feels like it's not that important. And in order for the human revolution to happen, we need to understand that these are very valuable things, even though we don't have degrees for humility or resilience. We don't have tests. We don't have tests for courage or humor. We still need to give time and focus on these things. Now, the danger is that if we only focus on what we can measure, we forget many of the important things in life. All the important things in life we cannot see in Excels or GDP, the enthusiasm of teachers, or the strength of relationships, and thus so forth. Those things are not something we can put in numbers. Let's say there's a young fellow who goes to a job interview and says, I'm very empathetic, I'm very courageous, I'm very creative too. Now, everybody wants to get this kind of person to work for them, obviously, but they don't have any kind of degree to show. They don't have anything to really validate that. Anybody can say those words, right? So how can we validate this kind of skills in the future? This is really the question. And I think we are seeing that because we like to lead by numbers and we like to focus on the metrics and so, sometimes we forget this. Even in today's society, we value more speed than we value depth. So we want to make things very fast. We want to concrete results. We want to kind of, progression. But it doesn't really help if the direction is wrong, right? If we are lacking depth, experience, we're doing the right things, it doesn't matter how fast we are. So I would say we need to make the world a better place, not more effective. And there's a difference in that, right? I mean, if you think of technology, very often people think of technology as, well, let's make it more effective, let's optimize it, right? But that's not the point. We want the technology to make things better for us, not just faster. We can make every library and shop and every school and so on, very effective and optimized without any humans involved. But is that better? I don't think so. The doctor doesn't think what is the most effective painkiller for the patient, but they are thinking what is the best painkiller for the patient. So there's a difference, right? We have to go to a test if we want to drive a car, right? We have to go to a test if we want to hunt. But we don't have any kind of test that you should take or you would have to take if you want to raise a kid for 20 years, for example. So even though we cannot measure certain things, they're still of vital importance. So this is something we need to kind of realize. It's a leadership challenge in the long way, I think. We need to give these more time. We need to trust that this is something we should invest in. Let's say one more example. If you go to a doctor's, obviously the time slots are usually 15 minutes, right? First of all, why? Because somebody has calculated that, well, this is the most effective thing for the system, so we can have 4 patients in an hour, we get more money this way. But we have also a lot of research already saying that if the doctor is very empathetic towards the patient, they actually get better sooner. So actually it helps, so they should be empathetic. But still, we are stuck in 15 minutes. I mean, 15 minutes is not long enough to really go deep with the patient. If I told or asked, let's go to 30 minutes because that's what we need, many people would say, well, show me the numbers. Show me where's empathy under the line. Is it really worth it? And it's very difficult for me to do that. I don't think I can actually do that. So we go back to 15 minutes and that's how the world works. So maybe we need new kinds of ways to make these visible, new metrics, new ways to kind of validate these things, even though we cannot make any universal kind of metric to, let's say, happiness, but it's still important. Well, of course, we have already metrics for that, but it's not universal. Now, the question is, what can I get from you that I can't get from a computer? Think of it for a second. Why would I come to you and not go to a computer? Because what things do you get in mind? I mean, first of all, Google doesn't look me into the eye, right? So that's one thing, I would come to you. Google doesn't have a body language. Google doesn't breathe, right? They are not present in the same way. Google cannot touch me on the shoulder. What else? What can you think of? What can I get from you that I can't get from a computer? That's something that we should see as a value. That's something we should really hold dear. Now, when we're living in the information age, we have to also change the way we ask questions, because usually the way we ask questions, it kind of shows what we appreciate as well. And as long as we ask questions when we have to answer with a fact, it's not the best question we can ask, because obviously we have different ways to find the fact online. So we have to shift the focus a bit. Now, at school, for example, or in different workplaces, let's say this is an example, we ask a question like, what is the capital of Finland? And there's one right answer to this question, obviously, it's Helsinki. And usually the question, if asked in the classroom, it creates a situation where some students know the answer and some don't. So some of them feel very good about themselves, some of them are a bit shameful, I don't know, they feel like they're worse. And it kind of creates this culture of right and wrong answers, which is not maybe the best for learning. But anyway, somebody answers, it's the wrong answer, they laugh at him or her, then they got the right answer and they move on. I would suggest that we move from asking this kind of question to what is the most important city in Finland? Because now you can actually answer with any city. It all depends on how you argue in favor of it. So what arguments do you have? You can say Oulu, because there's a lot of technology there, right? So in this perspective, it's the most important city for the future. Maybe you can say Turku, because the location is important and the history that we have there. Or you can say Helsinki because most people live there. So the question kind of creates a situation that you can actually answer with any city, but you have to tell why. And if you ask Google, what's the most important city in Finland, you don't get the answer the same way, because it requires thinking. It requires, connecting the dots. It requires creativity and, perspective. And as I told earlier, the context, this is the skill. So this is just one concrete example. With different questions, we would actually get more valuable information out of the peer. So just an example. But what is the most important city in Finland? It shifts the focus. Well, let's move on. It's also good to remember we have 9 different kinds of intelligences, at least when we look at Howard Gardner's research. But it's clear that we are more focused on 1 or 2 or 3 of those at school, for example. But still, it would be good to develop all of those. Because yes, a machine can be very good at 1 or 2, but separately, right? They are not kind of cross-disciplinary, multidisciplinary species. No, they are very good at doing certain tasks. And every now and then I hear people talk about computers getting our jobs or so, and I would say they are not taking our jobs. They're taking tasks, but not jobs. I think job is something more than just a series of tasks. But anyway, we have 9 different types of intelligences, and it would be very good to develop all of them so that we can use all that different thinking. Once I was in MIT a couple of years ago, and I asked one professor actually, and it was a stupid question. I only realized it later, but it was a very good lesson that I got. I asked, how many years do we need to reach the point where our phones are better than us? And the professor replied, he said, well, Perttu, first of all, you cannot say something like that because it shows that you don't understand what you're talking about. Why do you use the word better? Like in what way? Like you have to be specific. Are they more linguistically skilled, or are they logically better? Or like what is the area that you're actually talking about? You can't just make a generalization like that. So I think that's a very good thing to kind of remember today as well. We like to make things good or bad or black and white, but we have to be specific and understand the nuances of things. So if you think of it this way, you can specialize in one job or one field, and you can be very good at that, and that's completely okay. But I would suggest you to be very versatile, because when you do different kinds of things, you also gather experience from different fields. So it doesn't matter what happens in the world, you always have something valuable, something that you can offer. So it's not that risky than going 15 years into one specific job, and then who knows, in the future something will happen to that job, or maybe computers or machines, technology will make it very different. So I think the best investment would be to be very versatile. But okay, let's move on to a couple of examples from like, or let's move into the lifelong learning kind of side of the presentation, where I'm talking more about how to actually get these skills. Now I have to say, you have to go try these out and test these, but something that inspired me a lot. Now this is Sebastian Thun. He has taught at Stanford. He's a professor at Stanford teaching machine learning, AI, and he's one of the best, as they say. Usually the lectures, the lessons, the courses are always full because he's so popular. And even all the master students in computer sciences, they don't actually even get in because the auditorium, it only takes like a couple of hundred of students or so. But anyway, he wanted to open up the resource, like the course, so that everybody could actually join, because he felt bad about the fact that some people would want to come but they can't. So he streamed the whole course, and this was years back, when it was not that common yet. And he streamed the course, and obviously when one of the best is kind of giving a course for free, the word gets out pretty fast, and people start to talk about it. And when the first lesson starts, or the first course starts, 162,000 people join. So all around the world, 160,000 people want to come to listen to this guy. Well, we in Finland we got 100,000 for the AI course, but globally this is pretty well as well. So Sebastian, he teaches the course like he always has done, and he doesn't make any changes, to the pedagogy or the methods and so. But at the end of the course, he's curious to know, how, like, have these people, these unknown people, actually learned anything? How has this worked? Because he has never seen those people, he's never talked to them, but there's a lot of them, obviously. So he wants to get some kind of data back. So he sends a test to all of them and asks, could you please, just make the test, send the results, and I just want to know how you do. And he didn't tell them that he actually made the test a bit more difficult. So, because there's so many people, there will be, very different results as well. But anyway, he gets the results back, and a bit less than 200 got all the, answers right. So 100% correct answers. So a very little margin, right, of the whole group of people. And what is funny is that from all those people who got 100% right, none of his students were there. So the people who were physically there, present, Stanford, right? None of those students were able to hit on 100%. But what this teaches to us is that there's so much potential, just because these people got access to the resource, the materials, they became experts in machine learning, right? And Sebastian is quite frustrated, obviously, and guess what he does next? He quits. So he feels like, why would I actually remain here? Why would I only teach these people in these between these walls when I can actually give it to the world and help thousands of people? Why would I stay here? So he quits, and he starts a new company called Udacity. And Udacity works so that they ask, companies, what kind of, skills are what do you need right now? What kind of workers are in need? And based on the answers, Sebastian and his team, they collect the basic information around those fields, and they teach these kind of 3 to 6 mini degrees, 3 to 6 months mini degrees, with which you can actually apply for the job then. And obviously it works quite well, they know what they're doing, but what makes this funny is that the business model, it obviously costs quite a lot. But if you don't get a job 6 months after graduating, you get all your money back. So you have a kind of guaranteed insurance. If you come to us in a year, you have a job. If you don't, you haven't lost any money. So, welcome, right? It's incredible. I mean, these things, we haven't just heard about them yet. How many of you have ever studied at Udemy? It's one of the biggest online schools. There's over 100,000 courses, over 550,000 teachers, and over 30 million students every month are studying there. And many of us haven't even heard of it. I was scrolling Instagram some time ago, and I got an ad where they said that, well, there's one course now for sale in Udemy, discount. So the long version of mechanics, right, for $7. Do you want to join? Click there. And I was pretty stunned. If you think of it like the price of a hamburger meal, you can actually study for hours, very good materials, mechanics if you want. So this is becoming more and more reality. And obviously this, when you think of the global perspective, this is very interesting. I have many friends in Myanmar where I've worked as well. Or in general, if we think of developing nations, you have to get a degree in order to get a job, right? You don't get the right kind of degree yet from these online schools, even though the education, the quality of it would be much better online. But rather, many people still go to the locals and listen to them just because they need the paper. And with that, they get to work. Even though I think every employer would actually want the best kind of education for their workers. So you know, it's very interesting to see what will happen. Will these be an option for us, you know, really someday? Well, maybe. Now, this is another example, but let's talk about children for a little bit. This is Cognitoys. So it's an intelligent toy that you can give to a child, and it can talk because there's IBM Watson, so supercomputer, linked via Bluetooth to this machine. So the child is actually talking to a supercomputer. So when you give this to a 5-year-old, they have a lot of questions. They ask, you know, why are the dinosaurs not here anymore? Or why is the sky blue? And what is space? And they have all these questions. And because this dinosaur is a supercomputer, they go through the internet, right? They find the sources, they scan Wikipedias and such, and they give an answer in 2 sentences to any of your questions, what you ever want to know. So imagine if we had these when we were growing up. You know, let's say 5-year-old is playing 2 years with this toy, and then they go to the 1st grade. They know quite a lot already, right? They can teach their teachers, their peers. And the kid doesn't even realize that they are kind of at school when they're playing with the dinosaur. They are just curious, but they get the answer immediately, even like straight away when they want it. So I think this is pretty interesting. You know, what kind of smart toys will change the way we learn? And I mean, why don't we have these at school as well? You know, when do I want to go to a computer? Because computers, they have actually last night they have read all the latest scientific papers, you know, published, so they are up to date with their information. And when do I actually want to go to a human and ask from them? You know, what are the things that humans again can give to us? Well, Clayton Christensen said a couple of years ago that 10 to 15 years is what it takes for half of the American colleges to actually be in bankrupt. And this was quite bold, in my opinion. When I read this a couple of years back, I was a bit suspicious, right? Because it felt that, you know, it's difficult to imagine really that this is how fast it would happen. But guess what happened a couple of months ago? Well, Google told us that, well, we have these mini degrees. It costs $300. It takes 6 months. And with this Google degree, you can actually apply for a job. Well, the fact that a private company is, you know, granting degrees and such, it's worthless if there are no companies that actually say it's okay. Well, when it comes to Google, there's over 50 companies already that say, well, you can come and work for us if you have a Google degree, including Walmart, Bank of America, Intel, and so on. So maybe Clayton is right. When you have an option that you have a job in about like half a year or a year, it takes only hundreds of dollars. The basic and the normal basic university and colleges, their business models, they kind of survive, because why would you want to pay for tens of thousands of dollars when you have this? So maybe Clayton was right. When we go 10 years from now, there will be changes, right? That's for sure. Well, why did I tell all these examples? This is my point now. The traditional work life and the path we have gone through, it's very different than what we are experiencing today, you know, the future of work life. It used to be like this. We do things in certain order, and we get forward in our careers. And life paths, in general, they follow certain kind of stencil, right? We do certain things in certain time. But in the future, it's not like that anymore. Now, we all have our different paths, different path. And if you think of it, you know, when we go back in history, let's say 50 or 100 years, and actually always before that, it was very common for the parents to have similar life, or let's say for the children have similar lives as their parents. It was very easy to give kind of advice and tell what do you need, son or daughter, to remember or know in life. And those life paths were identical, like 50 or 100 years ago. Today, if you think of parents and their children, or if you have children, for example, their life path they won't look anything like yours. They're very different. They have different challenges. They are doing different things in different time. So we have to update our mindset on how do we actually go on from here. You can update your skills, you can take an online course, and it changes the course of your life. It changes what you're heading to. Now, what we used to do, we used to tell people what are the secure jobs, what are the things that you should know and remember. You know, I think every parent wants their kid to have, you know, a secure jobs, but I don't think there's secure jobs anymore. So I think today we have to just face the fact that, you know, even though you get any degree today, it doesn't grant anything to the future. You don't know in the next 20 years if you still have a job with that degree. I mean, think of somebody who got an MBA before Excel was developed and after Excel was developed. So these two people have very different value in the job market, for example. So the same way, if somebody got the degree 10 years ago or today, they are in a different starting place. That's obvious. But the dangerous thing here is that we are still kind of raising kids to become the successful people of the past, right? We still have the image in our heads, you know, what you should do. And actually, I was once told, one older gentleman told me that, you know, Perttu, people will always fight and argue, and people will always be sick. Those two things will never go away in the world. So, if I was you, you should really be, you know, a doctor or a lawyer, because people will fight, people will be sick. It feels like, well, that's a good thought, yes, but if you think of AI, where is it coming first? Well, to those jobs, right? It's really changing those industries quite a lot. So even these kind of very old wisdom, you know, it doesn't really, we don't know where we're going. If we go back, we usually were happy when we knew what our path is going to be like. You know, when you have security, you have you have, you know what will happen next. You can actually be happy. Now, in today's world, you don't know, or we don't know, where the world will be in 2 years, but we still should somehow be happy with all this, you know, insecurity. So this is a challenge. It's a big challenge for all of us, and maybe this just requires a change in our mindset. In Silicon Valley, I was told a story. You know, there was one Navy SEAL who were talking about the experience, you know, what it was like, and then we had one coach who was responsible for the training. And the coach said that, you know, what they aim at doing is they aim at testing these individuals so well that when they actually are being released into the world and they go to the field to actually work on something very, very, very dangerous and difficult, the coach, they can have a peace of mind because they really know that those are the best of the best, and we have really tested them. So physically, mentally, we don't have to worry about those people. And I think that was a nice kind of way of thinking, because also for the Navy SEALs, when they are in the field, they have to trust each other 100%, and even their lives can actually be on somebody else's hand, and then they have to like work very well together. So that trust is only, you know, gained through a very intense training. They know that that person went through the same shit that I went. Well, I can trust that guy. So I was thinking one day, is it possible that we take this thought into education context? So let's say when you go and get out from the school, or you get a degree and you start the work life, every parent, every teacher, or professor, they can have peace of mind because they know that, well, you will survive, you know. In this future world we have, they don't have to worry about you. You don't have to know everything, obviously. You don't have to be the best in everything, but you have the right attitude. You understand that the life will go like this. So maybe that's something that the school at best can give to us. The idea that, well, it's on our shoulders from now on. So this is something to think about. If we zoom out and take a bigger perspective, in a way there's only been two eras in the world, if you look at the way the world has changed, the quality of change, for thousands of years, for a very long time, change has always been, linear. So if you want to change something, the information goes from one person to another to a third, and the information moves or travels only as fast as the horse can run. So there are no viral phenomena. There's no big things in the same way. So change has always been linear, yes, but also, even though the change could go even further, usually it has been restricted to a local change. So in this city, in this kingdom, in this country, or maybe geographics come in the way. So even though we could, it's difficult, so we don't go forward, we don't move forward. So change has always been linear, it's been local. For the last 30 years, what do you think? Has it been local in your perspective? No, it's been global, right? This year, at last, has taught everybody what it means. If something happens on the other side of the world, it changes your life next day. You hear about it next minute, right? This is very new to us. Well, the same way, has the change been linear, in your opinion? Well, no. For the last 30 years, it's been exponential. It's been accelerating. And this is pretty obvious when you look at the pandemic we're having right now. So this is what it actually means when something is doubling and exponentially growing. So we don't have much experience from this kind of world, only about 30 years, right? Now, this is a very interesting time to be alive, because we have people from both eras. People who have lived before internet, who remember the time before internet, and we have people who've been born into this new world who have never seen anything different. And I belong to that group as well. I'm 1 year younger than the WWW. So, well, actually, I have to say a joke. I mean, if you are over 30, you can now raise the hand virtually if you know you're over 30, and you remember the time before internet. So you have the experience, you have the memory of what it used to be like. Think of it this way: you are going to be the last person, last generation ever on the earth who will remember that. You will go extinct with that memory, because we are not going to go back to that time. So we still have people who remember what it used to be like, and from now on, we won't have that memory anymore. But anyway, what does it mean when it comes to skills? Well, older generation, or let's say it this way, for generations, we've always taught the younger generation what they need to know, and when they grew up, they gave it forward, right? So they told their children and so on the essentials in life. Now, when the world changed, when we got to this new era, this tradition that we always had, that we kind of give the general knowledge forward, it stopped. Because there are a lot of things that the older people had to know, but there's no use of telling that forward anymore, because now the environment is so different that those skills are not important anymore. I mean, older people, they remember how to use the phone book, or they have seen a phone book, right? They know how to use the rotatable landline phone, and they have maybe read a paper map one day. But there's no use to tell the next generation how to handle those things, because in today's world, that's not needed. So when the change happened so fast, all the older people were not able to adapt quick enough. And we got this new generation, these millennials, these Generation Z, who are now actually taking everything for granted, and they understand it from early age. And now actually we have a situation where these younger people, let's say teenagers, they're teaching their parents how to use the phone. they're teaching their grandparents, how to find settings on the laptop and what to do there. And if you think of these skills, they are very important in the future. I mean, if you don't just understand and know how to use basic technology things, I mean, you won't survive. So these are very fundamental skills for the work life as well. But maybe for the first time ever in human history, the skills, the knowledge is going from the younger generation to the older generation. not the other way around. I mean, tell me, has there ever been a time like this before? You know, has there ever been a time where this has even been possible? Now, I mean, obviously, babies and toddlers have really taught their parents a lot about life, but I mean, the context is that the teenager can take an online lesson from the other side of the world, then educate, you know, his or her, you know, nearest people. So, in this way, this is very, very exciting time to be alive. We have to change our minds. We have to change our mindset regarding profession. We have to change our mindset when it comes to security, for example, general knowledge. I mean, if you think what it used to be 30 years ago, general knowledge, and today, two different things. 30 years ago, security or privacy, very different than what it's today. 30 years ago, money, and today, very different forms, right? 30 years ago, expertise, and today, different things. I mean, what I mean by this, let's do a quick thought experiment. We can have a 17-year-old, let's say, YouTuber, who downloads videos or uploads videos on YouTube every day, and I could say they are best that we have. You know, they know how YouTube functions. They know what to do. They understand the different kind of trends over there. They know everything about it. They're like fish in the sea when they're on YouTube. And I could say that person right there, is the best social media consultant we have in this country. But the problem is that, well, a 17-year-old teenager doesn't look like an expert, right? They don't sound like an expert. They don't talk like an expert. They don't wear the clothes like experts do. And nothing about this individual kind of tells us that this is one of the best we have. And this is a challenge. We still have a very strict view on what expertise looks like. It has to be a certain type of expertise, and it has to be kind of gained, the expertise, in a certain way. And that's why we have such hard time understanding Greta Thunberg and other figures like that, because they don't fit the model we have in our heads. How can they be experts? It's not possible. But I would say that now some of the people who have been born up in this, raised in this new era, they are experts in that era, and they can actually teach many things to their parents. So in that way, expertise can be limited to only one type of expertise. So that's what I mean by that. But it's also good to remember the demographics we have. I mean, how many people are under 30 globally? How many people? Well, more than half, over 50%. So in Finland, in the Nordics, for example, we don't understand that. We don't see those people because we have the opposite, right? We have more of those old people. So we don't realize that when we're walking on the streets, we should see every other person being under 30. Actually, every fourth under 14, which is crazy if you think of it. I was in Africa. I was in Uganda and Kenya in February, just before COVID. And they told me that the average age in Africa is 17. Think of it. So my point here is this. In the next 10 years, this group of people, like half of the population on Earth, will be overrepresented in the work life. You know, in 10 years, these are the people whose thoughts, whose values, whose thinking is driving many fields in a certain direction. But when we make decisions today, we don't usually see the people who are under 30. They are the older people, right? And in this way, we might need more this kind of cross-generational dialogue. You know, we need the young experts as well as the older experts. We need the experience, the depth. We need the older people who know what is important in life, what hasn't changed, what will not change in the world. But we also need the younger people who have the energy and who have the opinions and, you know, who has the, well, what it takes to really take the world to the next level, if one could say it like that. But you get the point, right? We have to remember to include both because we have different strengths, different skills. And in the future, as I said, in 10 years, those people, we will have many of them. And those actually, this generation is better educated than any generation before. So that's changing as well. If you wanted to change the world like 100 or 1,000 years ago, you didn't have much options as an individual. Like if you were not a king or some kind of ruler, you didn't have power either. But if you want to change the world today, you can code the next Facebook in your garage, and it changes millions or billions of people's lives, right? So you and I, we all have more potential power than any king just a couple of hundred years ago, if you think of it. I mean, if you have Google in your pocket, you have access to information more than any president had 30 years ago. You can be a 10-year-old kid and you still have that. We all have more access to cloud computing power than any professor at MIT like 40 years ago. So this is very interesting, this shift that we've just seen, and it's quite new. So yeah, okay, let's go forward. Now, given all this, I was thinking, could I, design or build the future curriculum? So what are the things that we should teach at school? What are the things actually we all need in the future? Like if I was sent back to school, what kind of skills I would want them to teach me? And this obviously, there's no traditional subject here. And even though, let's put it this way, there are skills that help us to the end of the life. I mean, as long as we live. This is my point. I mean, if you think of coding, for example, yes, it is important right now, and you should code, yes, but it doesn't help you throughout your life, because maybe in some decades, we will have machines that actually write a big part of the code. Or, yes, Mandarin Chinese, it would be good to know that, and you should do that as well, yes, but maybe at some point we will have earbuds that translate languages, live. So the skill is not the same in 20 years than what it is today. So I want to go up one level bigger. What are the skills behind those things? So for example, coding, it's not about coding. It's about problem solving. And that's the skill that will actually help you throughout your life. So I wanted to take these kind of broad subjects and skills here. And I actually have to tell you, one of the inspiration, how I came to do this, I was in Silicon Valley. I asked Ray Kurzweil, who is he's a futurist inventor. He has also the title of the technology chief of technology at Google, or you can check that. But anyway, big guy. And I asked him if he was my age, I was 21 back then, and you had to go to study something, what would you go to study? And I was expecting some very hot topic, like he's going to answer blockchain or synthetic biology or quantum computers or whatever. And he actually said, well, if you want to make a favor for yourself, start with arts or fine arts or philosophy. That's the only thing you should or you have to study. Or not the only thing you have to study, but you should start with that. You shouldn't study anything else before that, because it's all about thinking skills and your character. And those things help you in everything that you do. And if you think of the skills computers can do, well, fine arts and philosophy, they challenge you to develop those skills that are important in the future. So start with that. And then you can think of something else. But start with what really remains or lasts in life. But anyway, I'll go through these quickly. I wrote a whole book about this thing. So this is actually each of these are one chapter in the book. But I'll go just briefly through them. The first one is storytelling and communication. Now, this might be even the most important one. Even though computers or machines can perform and do exact same things or as well good things as we can, they don't have a story. They cannot tell why they did it. What's the motivation? What's the meaning for that? What's the value that comes with it? If I write a poem and I tell people that, well, I was on top of this hill, I was looking at the scenery and thinking of my childhood when I wrote this poem, and then I recited to them, they can relate to it, right? they can see, well, oh, I feel this resonates. And even though a computer wrote exactly good enough or as good enough poem as I did, or made wrote a symphony, or maybe wrote a, well, you get the point. Whatever the end object is, it can be good enough or as good as what I did, but they lack the story. So I don't think we can relate to computers in the same way. And communication is very important. We need to be able to tell the story. Why do we do this? Why is it important? The quality of life is the quality of communication, I think. It all comes back to, do people understand you? Do they follow you? Do they understand what you're trying to say? Well, the second thing is passions and personality. Now, these are skills too. I see that passion is something that helps you thrive no matter what happens. I don't really I don't like the idea of having one passion and following it. I don't really recommend that in that way. I think we have many passions, maybe 10, maybe 20. But the thing is, we haven't just found them yet. We don't know what they are. And we have to kind of find them. That's the thing. When the world changes, if you're still passionate, you will find solutions. I mean, have you ever tried to beat a passionate person in something? Well, it's impossible, I think. You kind of do that. They will always go the extra mile. They will always find something more because they are, they're furious about something. They do it with their heart. So passion is something we should develop. It's a skill, understanding who you are. Does your personality fit the job place? And personality, what I mean by that is that if you only work and do things that you've been told to do without putting yourself in, giving anything about yourself, it's easy to automate that. You can swipe products on as a cashier. You can take boxes and move them in the warehouse. But you're not really giving anything about yourself. You're just a human robot to kind of exercise and do those things that you were told to do. But if you are passionate about something, if you really do your best, you contact people, you talk with them. You're the spirit of the shop, for example. We don't want to get rid of you. That's the added value that you bring. The personality you have, we cannot have that with the computer. So you should not try to put yourself in a box and try to be as gray and as possible, but rather develop who you are and see what kind of tasks help you really be the best version. So in this way, passions and personality help us quite a lot in the future. Also, the lack of them is quite bad. I mean, how much do we lose in a situation where we have like thousands and millions of people rush to work every morning and work on something they're not passionate about? Like, what's that resource, right? So we also have to understand what's the price of things that we left undone. We're very good at measuring change or progress, but we are not very good at measuring inactivity or what we left undone. What's the price of what we didn't do? Like, how expensive will it be for the next generation when we didn't do this and that? This is kind of the thinking we also need. So if you don't have passion, how much do we lose there? This might sound like it's a naive thought, but I still think we all have those things that actually drive us, that get us to flow. We just have to find them. Curiosity and experimentation. Now, we need to learn to ask what if questions better, because that's something that helps us predict and get ready for the future. How I see it, we've always been told what to do at school. Usually it starts very early age. Even in kindergarten we're told, draw within the lines, do this, do that. And if we are not doing that, if we make a mistake, they say that's a bad thing, you shouldn't do that, do it like this. When we go to school, they tell us, read these chapters, do those exercises, this is your homework, go to these courses. They always tell us like what to do, and we follow, obviously. But when we get out of school, all of a sudden we have a situation where nobody's telling us what to do. So we are on our own. And many people feel lost. I don't know what to do. I don't know what I want to be. I don't know where I'm going to. And maybe that is because we haven't been taught curiosity and experimentation. It hasn't been seen as a good thing. If in the kindergarten they said, well, yes, you draw like in a way we were not expecting, well, you were curious, and that's good. You were able to experiment something, and you always should try new things. So we should give compliments when people go off track, and not try to make everybody the same. So in this way, in order to succeed in the future, we need to be able to experiment, try new things. We need to be curious. I think if we don't have curiosity, that's one of the worst things to happen for us in the future. We don't want to know anymore. We feel like, okay, I've gone to my schools, this is enough. I don't think it's enough. Persistence and grit. We live in a world now that's been designed to give us what we want, and as quickly as possible, as easily as possible. The instant gratification is all around us. Our attention span has gotten shorter. No matter what we do, our attention, people pay for that. Where our eyeballs are, there's money. And this kind of environment is not the best environment to really help us be consistent about something, to commit to some projects. If we want to do something for a long time, we feel like, well, there's a better option, let me go there. And we all know that if you want to achieve anything great in your life, you need to be able to commit and be persistent. Things don't come easily. They come over a long period of time and hard work. So this has become a skill in today's world. You have to be able to develop your persistence in this fast-paced world. Technology and future. Well, first of all, it would be good for all of us to talk more about technology and what it means. Is it good or bad? How do these different technologies work and function? Just to get our hands dirty with it. We need to understand the basics. The same way we talk about internet and phones and AI today, we need to understand synthetic biology and nanotechnology and virtual reality and 3D printing and so on in the future. So the worst thing to happen is that we feel it's distant from us. Like, oh, I'm not a technological person. I don't. Like, we have to learn that it's normal. It's okay. It's a tool. We all have a relationship to it. So in this way, technology is important to touch on, even on the early age. But also future. I think it would be good to go through some scenarios in order to discuss and talk about, is this the direction we want to go to? I mean, if I give a couple of examples to you, WHO, the World Health Organization, gave a prediction a couple of years ago that 2030, the most common disease in the world is actually mental illness. Now, think of it. In 10 years, this is actually why we are sick, mostly in the world. In the same report, they said that over half of those cases, they believe, will actually occur with people or children below 14. I mean, these are now 4-year-old children or less, and the newborn. Now, this is very frightening prediction, in my opinion. This is the world we're living now. This is one of the biggest challenges we have. So in a country like Finland, where this is actually even a bigger problem, what are we doing to fight against this trend? Have we taken this into consideration already? What do we think of this future scenario? Or let me give you another scenario. Let's say, well, SpaceX, Elon Musk, they are building the satellite internet, the internet, how do you call it? Like this big connection. I mean, Starlink is the name of the project, but they are putting satellites in the space that provide us global connection wherever we are. And they've already tested the first areas. I mean, it was 1 year ago when Elon Musk tweeted the first tweet that came from an internet provided from a satellite. So satellite network, maybe it's the best way to describe it. So if they are actually able to build this thing, and I really think it's going to happen, let's say it takes 5 years or 10 if we're very conservative. Now, what it means? It means that 5 to 10 years we will add 3 billion people online. Just like this. Think of it. 3 billion people will do their first transaction or purchase ever in their lifetime. 3 billion people will create their first profile ever and download their first photos on some platform ever. And the global trade will look quite different. If we have now problems with trolls, fake news and such, just wait 10 years, we have the half of the population to come online. Also, we have 3 billion new brains connected, which means the innovation that's happening is only going to go faster forward. So this is the scenario where we have to be able to succeed. We have 3 billion new competitors who offer to do the same job as we do, but they are offering to do it cheaper, faster, and remotely. They want the same opportunity that we want. So this is where we have to be able to thrive in 10 years, let's say. So another example of future scenario that we should discuss more. Well, anyway, you get the point. Compassion and honesty. Now, maybe you've had this kind of situation. Somebody calls you and tries to sell you something over phone, and maybe they ask you how you're doing, which is okay. But then they go a bit further. They ask what kind of weather it's been, and they want to kind of get deeper with you. And it doesn't feel good because you know that they are not really interested in you. They just want to sell you something. And this is their trick to break the ice and kind of, get to know you, and then they just want to sell you something. So when we see that somebody is not being authentic, somebody is not being honest actually, it pushes us further because we feel like, well, now this is the game, okay, let's play the role. So some kind of wall becomes between us, and the dialogue is kind of it's vanished. Now, if somebody was completely honest and straightforward, and let's say told me that, well, this is my job, I have to sell you something, do you have 1 minute? I'll go straight to my point. I would feel like, well, go for it, right? At least you're not trying to trick me into something. And I think that in today's world with social media and such, we have learned to show a certain side of ourselves. We're very good at posing certain values, and we know how to trick people. We know how to show some certain lifestyle and how to kind of behave and give certain image of ourselves. And in other words, we have become very good at lying. in subtle lies, we are very good at kind of playing a role. And in this environment, the skill to actually be honest and compassionate towards something who is being honest, it's very, very valuable, very, very important. So we need to, have it or see it as a skill. This is something that doesn't come natural. We have to now kind of oppose the trend and see. We want something authentic. I think we all are quite tired of seeing material that's being written and that's being, directed, and that's like, we want something real. And this is why compassion and honesty is on the list. Well, then ethics and moral courage. There are quite difficult ethic problems we're facing in the future, and already now, but we should talk about it more. This is something I actually was a bit surprised how much they talked about this in Silicon Valley in 2016 when I was there, versus what we did in Finland. When these technologies are evolving and we're in the kind of beginning of many areas, we still can do quite a lot to them. But we cannot have a situation where we leave it to certain people only to decide what is right and wrong. We all have to kind of think through, what do we think about this? I mean, let's say you gene edit a baby, or you change something in the genes. There's not a word about this in the UN Declaration of Rights, because it wasn't possible back then. We don't have framework to follow. So what do you think? Is it right or wrong to get rid of some disease that you're born with? Or is it actually, limiting freedom if you go and change something like that? Like, how do you interpret something like this? So it's very difficult, but we have to do more of this. And moral courage, the laws come always late, and we have to we have to do things that we know are right and kind of go and have the discussion, raise the awareness so that we do the right things and we drive the laws to the right direction. Interpretation and media literacy. When I was a kid, probably when you were a kid as well, we knew, or let's say our parents knew who was raising us. You know, who were the adults in our lives. So obviously our own parents, but also teachers, coaches, you know, our neighbors. These people were the adults who kind of looked after us. And if we got a new idea from somewhere, our parents, they usually knew roughly at least where we got that idea from. Or if I bumped into somebody new on my school path, my parents knew, you know, what circles are they from, and so on. Now, who is raising our kids today? Well, obviously, it's not just those few instances, few people, but it's thousands of people online, so in social media, who are secretly putting a lot of ideas, a lot of values, a lot of impulse to whoever is scrolling. And when kids go online, they spend more time on their phones than with their parents talking. There is hundreds of secret, you know, teachers, so to say, who are affecting our children. And the parents today don't have any control over who is actually giving and sharing those ideas. You know, who are those people my kids are following, what their values are, what they happen to post today or tomorrow. We don't have any kind of control over it anymore, which means the interpretation media literacy skill is more important than ever. I mean, obviously, we all know this is important, but especially from this kind of raising kids' point of view, it's very different to build an identity today as it was just a couple of years ago. I mean, I'm one of the last generations that was not, you know, in social media at high school yet, or this elementary school. People who are like 3-5 years younger than me, they have already gone, you know, full into that era, and it's very different. Sometimes I feel like we're a different species. Like, how do you think and be like that? Like, it was very different for me. I mean, yes, I was in Facebook when I was 13, which means next year I've been half of my life in Facebook. So I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but I don't count that in because it's very different. It used to be very different when you compare to today's TikTok or, you know, Snapchat or Instagram and so on. But anyway, this is quite essential. Creative expression and improvisation. Many of the skills that I showed in the beginning are actually skills that are difficult to teach, but when you do something creative, you sing, you play, you paint, you actually get in touch with what is courage. You get in touch with, oh, this is what flow feels like, for example. And this is why creativity and creative, you know, tasks are kind of a gate to so many things. That's why we should focus on them more. And I also see that, you know, improvisation is the ability to make decisions when you have many options, or at least when something happens, you have to still be able to improvise and go forward. In the future, we will have new kinds of you know, challenges ahead, so we need the skill to be able to go forward. Problem solving and adaptation. Well, the way I see it, problem solving is the ability to have different perspectives to a problem. I would make everybody study a little bit of law, a little bit of coding, a little bit of art and history and gardening. Not because I want them to be lawyers or coders and so on, but because all of those professions have different kind of thinking when they solve a problem. I mean, coder slices the problem to certain kind of smaller fractions. Well, a lawyer is very good at reading and predicting text, right? An artist thinks of, you know, existential, you know, perspective, and a gardener is thinking of aesthetics. And we need all of those skills in order to kind of understand the problem we're having. I mean, let's say here's a problem. Let's say this is global warming. If I ask, how do you solve global warming, and I ask a politician, how do they answer? A politician obviously comes from this perspective and says, well, laws, right? Regulation. That's how we, bring change to society. So this is the way we can actually get control over it. If I ask entrepreneurs, how do you solve global warming? They don't say it's regulation, but they say, well, a company is much faster to act than any government. We can make decisions in a day, and if you look at who has actually changed the world, companies, they drive the change. So with new products, services, we can bring a big scale change very quickly, and that's what we need. So the entrepreneurs come from a very different angle to the problem. If I asked artists, hey, how do we solve global warming? They say, well, we need emotions to back everything we do. So we need a cultural change. We need to give people motivation. Let's make films, documentaries, let's make movies and music, because when people feel something, they want to do it, they will actually also do it. So they come from a different angle again. If I ask teachers, they say everything starts with education, and they come from here. They say we need to educate people because still people don't understand the relationships between things, what matters, what doesn't. So my point is that depending on who I ask from, they all see the solutions differently. And in the future, we will have complex problems like this, which means that we cannot all come from a certain angle. If we all went to the same schools, we all are the same, and we all agree with each other, hey, this is cool, this is the problem, it doesn't help because in a couple of years we'll face the same problem again. We see that we were not able to solve it. So this is why we need diversity, in my opinion. It's not just a nice word, but it's actually essential to solve the problems of the future. At Google, they said that when somebody is applying for a job, the most important criteria is, are they able to adapt? How good are they at that? They said that they won't take the person in who has the best CV anymore. Because if somebody has a good CV but they are not adaptive, it's not a good recruitment. So why would we take the person in? They're stuck. In 5 or 10 years, they shouldn't have done that. But if they take somebody, if they see that somebody has a curious mind, they want to develop themselves, they're eager. They don't have to have the best CV. They still hire those people because they know that that's a better investment in the long run. So in this way, it tells so much more about you, what you have in mind for the future, than what you have done in the past, which I think is quite beautiful. It doesn't really matter what you have done. Yeah, you might have a lot of experience, and that's good. You have to tell that, and the merits and awards, whatnot. But it's more revealing how you answer the question, what are you going to do in the next 10 years? It tells you, it kind of reveals how you think. Okay, let's move forward. Entrepreneurship and teamwork. We all are more or less entrepreneurs in the future. Doesn't matter if we want it or not. The attitude is what we need. We are responsible for our own path. We cannot expect somebody to say, well, welcome to work for us. We're going to be here for the next 30, 40 years. I don't think it's going to happen, or at least we have to change what we do every day. But the entrepreneur attitude is what we should develop. And teamwork, obviously, we get along with different kind of people, and that's normal for us every day. And well-being and inner listening. Obviously, if our head is not, healthy, if our body is not healthy, none of these skills can actually happen. We need to understand the boundaries. And I think maybe we have gone a bit backwards in this as well. We see more and more burnouts. We see that people are going earlier and earlier to sick leaves and we see the signals already. So maybe this is something we haven't been able to do well enough. Work comes home, yes, but we need to understand where's the line, where's the boundary. Am I feeling fine? Can I listen to myself? Okay, well anyway, this is in short the skills that I think we should develop in the future, and this is something I hope, tell me if something is missing, tell me something that wasn't there, but this is the framework I want to give to you. Now, it's 6:30, and I want to leave some time for the questions as well. I had one more slide about identity. I wrote a book about the future identities, and I would have material for a book about this thing, but maybe we'll at this point go to questions and comments. You can obviously ask me about this, or you can read the book. But at this point, I want to thank all of you for following until this point. It was a pleasure, and now you can ask, you can comment, you can challenge me as well. So, and also if you want to get a bit deeper, here are the 2 books that I wrote this year. But anyway, let's go to comments and questions. Have we received any?
Yes, thank you for Perttu for very insightful talk. You can send in questions as well during the Q&A. Link is in the YouTube video description, I think it's called. If you can't see it, please refresh the page and it should be there. But yeah, let's head into the questions. We have a bunch of them here. Let's see. Okay, so what kind of advice would you give new students that have just freshly begun their journey to their future working life?
So new students.
Yes.
I get a lot questions about, what would you tell yourself when you were 15 or 20 or this kind of type. And I usually tell that I wouldn't tell anything to the younger version of me, because I think all those different phases were needed for me to arrive here, which I am now happy of. Like, there's no shortcuts. But when you're starting your studies, the most important thing I think is to really go to different circles of people just to see how there are different bubbles and kind of how people think. My education is from the art university, so I actually have a degree from composition. So I've been always an artist in a way. I've played music, and when I started my first company when I was in high school, I kind of ended up spending more and more time with this business school students and the startup scene, and it was very, very good to kind of see some kind of balance. Okay, well, the art circles are cool, and the business circles are very different but cool too, but kind of to combine these two was really my sweet spot. And I think this is something that I would recommend for all of you to do. Don't only spend time with your peers. I mean, the people who are close to you and who are studying the same things as you, because it's very, very good to see the other side as well. And also just try new things. We have this kind of fear for failure, and it's a pity, but the better we can handle it, the better we are off. I once heard a story in Silicon Valley. There's a CIA agent who told me a story about a manager who came to the satellite program, and the manager had a very tough job, obviously, but he did very well in the job, and there were some months and years went by, and all of a sudden, out of this blue sky, out of the blue, he got fired, and this person is completely he doesn't understand why would they hire this guy. Why would you hire me? Because I've done everything just as you wanted. I haven't made a single mistake. Every launch, every satellite launch we did to the space, we didn't make any failures. And we're talking about millions and billions of dollars. So this is a good thing, right? That we didn't fail. So why do you hire me? Fire me. Why do you fire me? And CIA said, well, we saw that you do everything very well and you are not making any mistakes. And that's how we knew that you're not trying enough. We have seen over the years that when people are giving everything they have, they make mistakes. It's obvious that when you're pushing yourself a bit forward, it's not always pretty. But we want people who push themselves forward. And you were in your comfort zone. So we want to get somebody here who actually gives everything they have. And I don't know if this is a legend, this story, or how much this has been colored, but I think this is a wonderful lesson for all of us. You get fired if you don't make any mistakes. That's how we get the potential out of you. So the fact that you are making mistakes is a good thing. It's okay. You know that you are actually trying your best. And if you're not making any mistakes, then there should be somebody who's shaking you a bit, hey, should you try something new? So in the beginning of your studies, don't be afraid of making mistakes. That's fine.
Okay. There was this one question that it really hit me, especially when I'm an art student myself. So there was an interesting question here. How would you change the grading system in schools? Is the number scale good, or should it be done in some different way?
Well, obviously, a degree is a great innovation that we are not going to get rid of. But the thing is, we have to like add something to the number. Like the numbers are alone not enough. Maybe that's how I would phrase it. Especially in the future, maybe we need more verbal comments on your skills. Maybe we need more different ways to validate your experience. And I think there are a lot of people who might not be the best on paper, but still are super good. So I think I don't have answers to how can we measure these new skills, but certainly something needs to happen there. And I think that's something that, people working on fields that are difficult to measure will always kind of battle with. If you're an artist, if you're a social worker, if you do something like this, you have to be able to argue or tell the real value of your work. And it's always difficult when you don't have a number to show. So many times the appreciation comes with the numbers, but maybe also the adults and the employers who are looking for new talents, they also have to loosen up their viewpoint on who do we ask to come for the interview, for example. But it's a very good question, and I think there's no easy answer to that. How do we put a number to creativity? How do we put a number to compassion? I don't know. I mean, we have indexes. For example, Berkeley Innovation Index, you should Google it up. They have very good they have many different research up. And for creativity, they have an index, so you can actually measure creativity. But I see them as personality tests, for example. They are good at kind of showing the direction. This is something you are, but it's not just like set to stone. So maybe that's the difference.
Yeah. Next question. What advice would you give to someone in their 40s and 50s who has worked their whole life in manual labor? How should they start adapting this change?
That's a good question. Actually, I think maybe this is what I would have discussed or talked through in the identity part, because when we have worked in one job or one field for a long time, obviously it has become very important for our identity. We see ourselves as the title. If somebody asks, who are you? The first thing you say is your title. So when we have worked for a long time, usually it's the identity that's in the way for the change to happen. So we don't see that we could be something different, or we don't feel like this is not me if I jump to a different field. I think it's very nice that we are able to change and move on to next field. I think it's not very nice to kind of be stuck for the whole lifetime in one thing. So maybe one thing that we should start with is kind of working our identity so that change is possible in the first place. But it's true, it's a very good question, because what I'm most afraid of the future of work is the inequality that is being increasing all the time. I mean, the differentiation between high-paying jobs and low-paying jobs is only going to be more and more black and white. And that is a bad thing, obviously. We have to really try to equalize it as well as we can. And it's mostly the reason mostly technology is the reason for it. Usually when we develop a new tech, something new, in the beginning, it sets two people apart, right? The person who has it and the person who doesn't have it. So in the beginning, tech actually, it's not good for us in this perspective. But over time, when many people get it, then it actually helps us all. But now that we are getting more and more and more technology, for a little while, actually, we're only going to push the ends further. And the question is, how quickly can we jump over it so that it doesn't only help the few, but actually all of us. And this is why I see like the technological advancement is not only a good thing. Also, I would say that many people are afraid of the technology. Let's say you've been in the manual labor for a very long time, and because of that you say the AI is bad, or the robots are bad, or whatever the technology that is kind of replacing you is bad. But I would say the technology is not bad. Obviously, it's a neutral tool, but what you're actually afraid of, or what you're kind of worried about, is that the structures beneath are not able to handle the change the technology is giving us. So you present the fear towards the technology where actually you're afraid of the structure that are holding up, right? So I hope you get the idea, but the idea is that there's nothing bad about the technology, but the fact that we are not able to re-educate you and help you forward in the work life. And if the government and the bigger institutions don't take responsibility for changing the structures, then the change starts to happen outside of the control. And then we get bad things when people start to really fight like Luddites against the new tech. So in this way, I understand the frustration about the technology, but it's more like the structures that should help you forward. You know, I was asked to the tulevaisuusvaliokunta, the future, I don't know what the word is, in the Parliament House. They had a meeting and we talked about AI and education and skills and such. And one member had calculated the amount of money we would need in Finland to re-educate every person between this age group. And obviously it was a huge amount of money. Like the first comment was, we don't have money for that. Like, what is the budget that actually makes it possible to do this? And I agreed, obviously. But I said, and I didn't want to be like naive, but I just said that, yes, it is a lot of money. But do we want to try how much money it is going to cost us if we don't re-educate our people, our population? Well, that's even worse, right? So sometimes we have to see that even though something is, expensive, not doing it is even more expensive. So getting the person from the manual labor to actually maybe they are solar panel specialists in the future, it costs a lot of money to do this. But if we don't do it, it's even worse. We are going to have the old technology, old jobs. We don't have the talent. Other countries go forward. They go, they pass by. So just a couple of thoughts, but a very good question. Thank you. Structures. Maybe I would focus on that regarding that question.
Okay. In your talk, you mentioned these online courses. Don't these online degrees miss the learning of soft skills and upraising to the academic life and work field community of traditional universities?
Yes. So exactly. When you're studying remotely, it doesn't involve the human interaction, and that's actually why they fall short in many things. When it comes to higher education, like the example at Stanford, that's where they're very good. When it comes to childhood and younger people, I don't think technology has a big part there at all. We cannot optimize and have shortcuts to the child's development. Like, I think in many ways today we are talking about like, learn this in a week, learn this in a month. This is how you do it quickly, and it's not like that, I think, especially when it comes to children and these soft skills. But I think the bigger question is obviously, for example, the Google 6-month degree, they don't have an incentive to educate you broadly, right? They only want you to do these things well and operate there very well. So schools and universities, how do we have the conversation? Like, where do we focus? We have better lectures online. We have better materials. We have more up-to-date materials online. Why do we still go to school? So the question is, what kind of activity does the school enable? Because the social things that happen within the rooms, that's the value of the school. So it used to be that you only get information from certain people, from certain auditoriums. But in today's world, obviously, it's not that way anymore. So the role, the focus needs to be changed. You go to school because of the activity, because the socialities, like all these things that are not possible to do online. So again, I wouldn't say that these online schools are kind of taking something from the like physical schools, but rather they are kind of helping the physical schools refocus what is more natural for them. I don't think it's natural for anybody to be in the auditorium and just listen to somebody for 2 hours without any interaction. That's not the best school can do. So we need to really understand, why do we come together? What's the value that only we, University of can give? Yeah.
Okay. In a CV, what would be 3 things that everyone should have in there to be competitive in the future job market?
Wow. You ask very good questions. I actually, I try to oppose these like buzzwords a bit. And I think this is, I don't want to, I hope certain skills don't become buzzwords like AI. Let's just put a little bit of AI dust, and it's important, it's very valuable. So I hope it's not like, everybody should have these skills and then you're future proof. But what are some of the most important skills still, in my opinion, is, well, first of all, compassion, I think. It's the mother of all skills, because everything comes through compassion. If you think of your life, your life's value, I would say, is in relationships, the people you have around you. The better you are able to understand them, the better you are able to jump in their shoes, the better relationships you have. And it kind of reflects to everything you do. Your well-being, your work, your development, your social life. So everything starts with compassion. So I would say develop that and success will follow. I'm pretty sure of that. But again, I don't know how it looks like in CV. I'm very compassionate. so it requires some kind of explanation, that's for sure. But that's something I really think is one of the most important things. And maybe I would say then, creativity, it is kind of a buzzword already. It's important though, but still, the ability to make decisions, because that's what creativity is to me. If you think of this bottle, if I asked you, hey, design a bottle, everybody can design a bottle. That's not easy, because you have millions of different choices what the bottle can look like, right? It can have this kind of curve, it can be like this, it can be plastic, it can be glass. It's not difficult to design a bottle, that's not creativity, but creativity is the ability to make reasonable choices and decisions. So maybe you realize, hey, a bottle like this, you can actually grab very well, and it has this space for the marketing, and so you are able to find from millions of options the potential ones, and then you create a meaningful, a good kind of end product, and that's creativity to me. So in the future, when everything is possible and you can do anything you want now, creativity is the ability to connect the dots. So I think creativity is the second one. So compassion, creativity, and what would I say for the third one? Even though it doesn't surprise anybody, storytelling, because it just works. You have to be able to tell a story about yourself. People who just show their CVs, I don't remember them the next day. It's impossible to, and if there's a gathering and we're mingling, and you come to me and tell what you've done, it's cool, but the next day I won't remember you. If you tell a story about something funny that happened to you, some anecdote, I'll remember for the next 10 years, oh, that's the guy who, right. So if you want to be remembered, the ability to tell a story. I have a short story to tell you, because I met a very, very high-profile lawyer in Cannes, in France, a couple of years ago. He was a lawyer for Michael Jackson and Elton John, and he knew all of the big stars. And I had tried to get a meeting with him for a year, right? A year. And I finally got to the same table. I was so nervous. I only flew to France for this meeting. And we met at Ritz-Carlton Hotel, the lobby. It was very fancy, all of that. We went to the table and sat down. He starts to ask questions. What kind of parents do you have? I was like, what the hell? Like, he asked, well, what kind of childhood do you have? Like, tell me about your home. I was like, is he joking with me? Like, is he not taking me seriously? And a bit later, he told me, well, I already read your CV. You don't have to impress me anymore. I wouldn't come to the meeting if I was still unsure about you. So I've read your bios, everything's fine, don't try anymore. I want to know you. Now that we're together, I want to get the information that we only can get when we're face to face. So why would I spend any time going through your bio? So he told me that if I cannot remember any story about you, I will forget you. So I want to now hear the story. Who are you? And I felt like, in business meetings in Finland, for example, many people don't think that, childhood stories belong to high-profile business meetings, but the best of the best actually do. I mean, that's probably why he was able to gather all these superstars. The same day, I talked with Mel C from Spice Girls, who was one of his friends. So, it's incredible. So maybe there's something to it. There's some truth. So storytelling, the ability to tell something meaningful about yourself. So, compassion, creativity, storytelling. That's a good question. Thank you. You're really giving me a hard time, but that's good.
Okay, next question goes. Super interesting, thanks. Where and how do you get your ideas and inspiration from? Followed sources, influencers, social media channels?
Yeah, I try to get a lot of information in all the time, but obviously, I would say the diversity in this is, again, the most important thing. If you only follow a futurist, you're in a bubble. Like, if you only follow this and that, it's not that meaningful. But I think when you're able to connect things between different fields, that's when you actually start to develop your own unique thinking. Like, oh, this businessman talked about this, but this artist talked about this too. Oh, this is now, and that's when you actually start to develop your own thinking. I watch a lot of YouTube videos. I have masterclass in my phone. I listen to podcasts a lot. I listen to audiobooks. I try to read them as well, but I'm not that good at that. But anyway, it's important to have different domains. And actually, when I think of the ideas, the material that I have, all these things, at the end of the day, quite a lot comes from people, real people, friends and family, and the discussion I've had. So in some way, even though there's the there's the best person of this and that telling me something in the podcast, it is cool and impressive, but still the real moments leave me with something more. Oftentimes I've seen that I'm telling a friend of mine something very passionately, and there's an emotion involved, because I got the emotion from a different situation with another friend that we were passionately discussing this. And sometimes I feel I'm not good enough to explain myself. The emotion is there, but the idea is not. And that's when I realized that actually it's so important to kind of have the emotion, the passion to what you're doing. And usually you get it easier with real people than just the internet. So internet is a good source, right? But still interact. that would be my guess. And also, when you read or listen to audiobooks, don't only listen to non-fiction books. It's important also to go through different kinds of books. I think that's been one of the best things. And it's funny, I always thought that, I have a very different background than most of these people. I have my artist, I've been to Silicon Valley, I've worked in Myanmar, found a couple of companies. I've been all over the place. And somebody could say, you are not able to focus. You should do one thing at a time. You are not a pro. You are just average in everything you do. But I think that's been the best blessing I have. The fact that I've been able to combine different things. So what I'm trying to say is that just, you can forget one thing and start a new thing. And it's okay. It was most freeing experience when I actually left one thing and started something else. And later on, you can come back to it. But still, just try new things. I don't have any better way to put it.
I guess we have time for a couple more questions. How should HR professionals change? It seems they or their bosses are not top of things in Finland, and brackets, diversity, changing career, identity and path, etc.
Well, I don't. I think the same challenges that I explained earlier, that we have to be able to phrase and verbalize the value of soft skills, for example. The same challenge we have with HR. It's always we are doing this and that, but how do you really put it into how do you argue in favor of it? And we already see it how we talk about humans in HR, which I think is quite ridiculous. I mean, we talk about asset. Humans are not asset. Humans are humans, right? We don't have potential. Energy has and market has. Human potential. What the hell are you talking about? We talk about we have engineered a human so that it would just fit the business context. But still, we should talk about humans. And maybe this tells just about the fact that we've had hard time talking about what the real value of humans and our potential is. Many people talk about full potential, for example. I would say, let's talk about unknown potential. Because full potential, I don't know what that is. I mean, it's quite a scary and sad thing to think that you've reached your full potential, because that's it then. And who tells you that's the full potential? So I feel like we have unknown potential, things that you don't know that you could do. That's unknown potential. And we all have those things that we could do, but we don't know yet. And maybe in HR, in general, we should help people find those new things, unknown potential that they could do. But maybe it just starts with different, ways to describe things. Potential is one of those things. Humans, they don't have potential. Market and energy, as I said. And maybe one more thing. It would be good to also verbalize what you actually do and get rid of the titles for a bit. So somebody can say, yeah, I'm a coder, I'm a policeman, I'm a teacher, I'm a nurse. But I would ask, what do you really do? What's the skill you have? Are you a campaigner or connector? Are you a collector, or are you a distinguisher? Or are you, make it active, make it dynamic, because that tells what you're actually good at doing. The kind of passive titles don't really help anybody. And that's actually the idea of the second book that I'm showing here, the Tulevaisuuden Identiteetit. But I don't... That's a difficult question. I think we have to discuss a bit more, get deeper in what you actually mean by that, in which ways HR is not on top of the game. But maybe it all comes with different words. We are able to perform better when we find better words to describe what we do and who we are.
Okay, and let's ask one final question, and as added restriction, you have to answer in under 1 minute. Should we transform our goals as society? For example, apply systems thinking more instead of optimizing wealth growth. What do you think?
Yes. Yes, I mean, our greatest fear should not be to fail at something, but rather the worst thing to happen is to succeed at something that didn't matter. And right now, we are going forward very fast as a society. Many things are changing, but then in 50 years we can ask, did we do the right things? Are we happy? Was it worth it? I mean, if we are tapping each other on the shoulders, oh, we were successful, and then we later on see that it didn't matter anything, that's the worst thing. So maybe we need to reshape our goals. Let's succeed in things that matter, and let's first of all find the things that are important in life. And I leave that to you. What doesn't change, as I started? What is the things that we can rely on? What are the things we should, be successful at? So, I live with that. Don't be afraid of failing. if you're trying the right things, it's still okay. But be afraid of succeeding in something that is not important.
Okay. Thank you for Perttu for the talk. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Just a quick announcements here. Startup experience course is starting in January again, and if you are not aware what it is or what happens there, please be warmly welcome to next week's Tuesday on Matchbox event where the student teams are presenting their work. For more information, see avp.aalto.fi, and we'll see you there. And thank you for joining us today, and hope to see you next year as well. Bye.
Thank you.